Everybody for coming. There's so many people here. Thank you. It means a lot to me that you're all here. About 3 years ago, I thought I was done with church. For a few terrifying months, I thought I was done with Christianity. I was heartbroken at the time. I felt abandoned, and like my prayers, I knew I would cry. I'm crying straight away. And like my prayers, my pleading with God was falling on deaf ears. I was angry, hurt, and had just become a mother. It was supposed to be the happiest time in my life, but I was overwhelmed, dangerously depressed, and I felt like God had turned his back on me. Sorry. Prior to those feelings of hopelessness, I can now see without a doubt that God has been leading me and using me all along. His ever-present hand guiding me along the rocky road to adulthood and eventually leading me to this place that feels like home. Leading me here to Midway Point Christian Fellowship, a place that I did not expect to love so deeply, a place full of people who have welcomed me with open arms. Christian faith has been part of my life for as long as I can remember. It is something I never questioned as a child or a teenager. I asked Jesus into my heart when I was 4 years old. It was an intrinsic part of who I was, and my belief did not falter for many years. After attending this church for the first 5 years of my life, then spending the next 5 at Lauderdale Christian Assembly, I ended up attending a Salvation Army church for the following 10 years or so, where the children's church program was exceptional. My husband, Reed, had also been involved in the Salvation Army growing up, and attending church together was a special time for me in the early years of our relationship. As I got older, life inevitably became busier. Years quickly passed, and Reed started working weekends. I began studying as well as working full-time, and church gradually fell by the wayside. I told myself that fellowship wasn't that important. I was still a Christian. I made excuses and fell further and further away from the part of myself that had been the one constant. Something that has been a struggle for me is the at times all-consuming illness that is a severe anxiety disorder. Knowing this and dealing with it for most of my life should have been a warning sign for what was to come. But I was blissfully ignorant and naive when I fell pregnant in 2015. Pregnancy was the most beautiful time of my life. Becoming a mother was my biggest dream, my ultimate life goal. However, when my precious son Isaac was born, I developed severe postnatal anxiety and depression. Stop crying, Mum. A panic disorder, which left me practically housebound for about 18 months. I was in hospital for over 6 weeks with my newborn baby, this little boy I had longed for. And I couldn't understand why this had happened and why I couldn't control how I was feeling. I prayed, I begged God to take away the pain, but it wasn't going to be that simple. I had things to learn, that was the bottom line, and the next 3 years would prove to be the hardest of my life, while simultaneously the most wonderful, as I learnt how to be the best mum I could. I set foot back in this church for the 60-year anniversary celebration in November last year, in support of my incredible Nan, who was given the honour of cutting the celebratory cake. I sat next to her, holding her hand, hearing and singing hymns I had all but forgotten. And then I listened to Roy speak of her faithfulness and the joy she brings to those around her, and my heart burst with pride. In that moment, I thanked God for her. I thanked him for her influence in my life and the beautiful relationship I have with her. She is the most wonderful witness through the way she has lived and continues to live her life. It is such a privilege to be her granddaughter. Being here that day meant that slowly, very slowly, my heart began to soften. A positive that shone through my diagnosis of postnatal depression and anxiety, was the opportunities that I took to share my story in a bid to help any other parents who might be struggling. I began to volunteer for PANDA, the national hotline for parents to call who are suffering in the same way I was. Part of this was to organise a fundraiser during Perinatal Depression Awareness Week. I wrote a song on the piano, wrote a speech, and organised catering for an afternoon event I planned. I was struggling to figure out the most appropriate venue, however, until I thought of my beloved Auntie Joan and this very church. That afternoon was a turning point for me, and spending time with my Auntie Joan in the lead up to that event was absolutely the hand of God working in my life, along with the fact that being in this building filled my heart with a joy I struggled to explain. My mum started discussing with me the option of her beginning to attend church here again, as she had so many years ago, and how she wanted me to go with her. I was dismissive of this idea at first, thinking there was no way I could possibly enjoy a church service again. However, the love and respect that I have for my mum, who is currently wrangling Isaac, is truly what brought me to attend here that first Sunday in January this year. My mum has done and continues to do so much for me, and I figured the least I could do was attend a service for her. But being here that day, it changed my life. I was overcome with such a sense of peace when I walked through the door. I recommitted my life to Jesus the second Sunday I came here, and his calm presence washed over me completely, healing my broken heart, helping me realise how blessed I am to live the life I do, regardless of the struggles I have faced and continue to face, and filling me with the knowledge that he did not and will not abandon me. My granddad had tried to convince me of this, and I feel like my testimony wouldn't be complete without mentioning him. We don't always agree, but I love and appreciate him so very much. He has always been invested in my spiritual growth. One of my most loved possessions is an old Bible of his that I will treasure forever. It is full of his handwritten annotations and thoughts, which makes it even more special, like I can always have a Bible study with him by opening its pages. And of everybody here, Grandad, I know you will be so happy I am finally getting baptised.